Okay, in this video, I'm moving on to the second assignment of making a pinch pot. So we'll start again with our bag of clay. You guys can cut a chunk off, and then you want to start by kind of making it into a sphere. And then here I'm going to show you how to wedge clay, which takes a little practice, but it helps like line the particles up in the clay, and also gets rid of air bubbles, so that when you're pinching your pot you don't have these pockets of air that actually hinders the form of your overall shape. Okay, so kind of from your square slab, turn it into a little ball of clay, and then this is about 1 pound. We have a scale at the studio you guys can use. Okay, just a little over a pound, but that's okay. But it's about a handful of clay basically, right? And then so lay that on a pretty sturdy table, and then you want to put your palms against the clay and kind of push down, so it starts to kind of make this triangle shape right here, an indentation right here. I'm going to push a little harder, okay, and then tilt it back up and push down and forward. So you're starting to get these creases in here, and basically rotating the clay. Oh, and I just heard a air bubble pop, and starts making this form. Okay, kind of, you want to do it minimum 20 times. But also, when you do this a lot, you can hurt your wrists. So try to push with your whole arm and your elbows. And I like to kind of spread my legs a little bit and have a little stance and put my, I guess, whole body weight into it. And I mean, this is only a pound of clay, but when you get to wedging, like 3 pounds, 4 pounds, 5 pounds for making bigger bowls, then it's really important to have that posture set up right. And so kind of get that going. And also I'm like using the rest of my palms to kind of contain the clay so that it doesn't spread out and turn into a flat pancake. What you don't want is to go all the way down like this and fold it, because you just then put more air bubbles into that clay that you just wedged out. So there's like this bullhorn, but what I like doing more is the wedging, is the shell wedging, like a cone, where it's more like this. But I've heard that it's a little more difficult compared to the bullhorn one, but you can see what fits your movements more and try it out. When you're hand building, it's not super important for you to wedge all the air bubbles out, but with like pinch pots, you're making it out of one piece, so that's it makes a difference when there's no air bubbles. And also air bubbles when the clay fires, if you have one in a pot, it can cause that part of the pot to crack and burst in the kiln, so you don't really want that to happen to your nicely formed shape. So you want to get rid of all the air bubbles. And also this clay is again a little stiff, so it's hard to wedge. So this is definitely one of the things, if you want to throw on the wheel, you need to know how to do. But okay, so looks pretty good. After you get it wedged nicely, start making a oval. Pound it into shape. Okay. There's a lot of different ways you can make a pinch pot, but I found this method to really work for me. So make an oval form, okay, and then all these little creases, you want to smooth that out as best as possible, because it will change, it'll help with the overall cleanliness of your pinch pot in the end, and it'll create less work later if you just take care of it now. Okay. This. Smooth it out. Pretty decent oval. Right. And then when you have this form, I like to take my wire tool and engage with your eye where the half mark is, and cut the piece. Okay, so you got two halves. This one's a little bit bigger, but it's okay. And then I like to take the sharp edges and kind of smooth it in. Okay. Alright. Same thing with this one, but you can do one at a time. But basically, I'm gonna have 2 pinch pots. That comes out of 1 pound of clay. Okay, so you have this, and then you can gently hold it, and then just make an indentation in the middle. Start kind of small, and then keep pressing down, and keep making that hole deeper into the pot. And make sure you don't rip right through the bottom. Just be gentle with it. Kind of gauge how thick your bottom is. And with ceramics, you want your pieces to be even in thickness. The bottom could be just a tad thicker than the rims, but because of the drying process, if one part's much thicker than the other, then the way the clay shrinks, it'll basically weaken the thinnest parts, and then that becomes very fragile and can break very easily during the drying process. But if you want to kind of really measure the thickness of your bottom, you can use your needle tool and hold your finger like this, and just basically hold the bottom of your pot, and then go in until you touch the tip of your finger here, and then put your finger at the end of the clay and see how thick that is. So that's still on the thicker side. I might go a little more, thin it out a teeny bit more. But before I start thinning it out, I'm gonna kind of start flattening the bottom. And now I have a big enough hole for both of my thumbs to go in, so I'm kind of starting to work with my other fingers on the bottom, starting to create a flat surface while I'm thinning it out, but also kind of pulling the clay to the edges, the bottom edges of the pot. And so I can see that I'm starting to be a little crooked, so then kind of reform it and evenly kind of work on the rim and the sides of the pot, thinning it gently. You don't want to press too hard at once. You want to just give light pressure and move on. And also, as I go, you can see like teeny little cracks start forming where you pinch, so that's where you want to kind of smooth as you go. If you leave it till the end, it does create a lot more work, and makes it hard to smooth the little crinkles out without warping your pot. So you want to do it as you kind of go. Okay, so it's kind of starting to form. And actually, what I suggest is in your sketchbook, draw out what kind of pinch pot form you want to create. So this one has like a little deeper feel to it, but if you want, you can make a little wider pinch pot too. So that's up to you, but this is probably easier starting out than making a wider piece. A taller is easier than wider for sure. But okay, so the thickness of my bottom here is starting to feel nice. I'm just gonna set it on the table, give it a good little compression on the bottom. See how deep that is? Okay, not very wide. And then this is where I like to use kind of this motion and stretch the clay out and up a little bit. And I also rotate as I do it. And then your outside fingers are gently also kind of working with your thumb. Okay. But you want to have a really nice base set up so that when you work on your sides, it has a nice stable foundation. Okay. And then you start getting that lower part of the pot stretched out nicely. You can kind of go back to the top and pinch, 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 and thin it out. And then when it's a little thinner, this is when I kind of use that sliding, pushing motion to manipulate the clay and stretching it. And so I don't see any air bubbles, so we did a pretty good job in wedging. But if you have air bubbles when you're doing this smoothing process, you can feel it. You'll get a little bump. And then if that does happen, you can take your needle tool and just pop it and release the air, and then kind of push it out and move the clay around and fill it back in. You might get a little divot that you'll have to work with a little bit, but it's better than leaving the air bubble in. So if you have an air bubble, please pop it. It's better to pop it now than it explode in the kiln and have a little chip off your pot. Okay, and then so my rim is a little jagged, so I'm just kind of smoothing it out so it has a nice feel to it. And then, like, at this point, I like to imagine what I would like to use the pot for. Do I want it for yogurt? Maybe a little ice cream with nuts on top. You know, when you're thinking about how it's going to be used, you can really be thoughtful and imagine how the food and the pot complements each other, and then how it might feel in your hands, the size of it, the weight. This is still pretty thick, so I'm going to continue winding it up. And if you think your bottom is a little narrow for your pot, you can kind of slam it down on the table and push the bottom, and then kind of rework it again, because it's still on the thicker side, so you have a little flexibility, and then widen the pot. And then another nice thing to have is water and clay when you're working. And then if you just on your cracks rub in a little finger dab of water like this, and then it makes it really slippery, but you can get those cracks smooth out. And then also, if you have like let's see, yeah, you can use whatever tools you have, like the metal rib sometimes is nice. I don't like the final look of the metal rib. I prefer my fingers and the way that smooths the clay out, but the metal rib sometimes can speed up the process, so you can kind of gently. Okay. Smooth. All the crinkles out. And then, yeah, I definitely don't like the metal rib, because sometimes the grog in the clay, which is like almost like sand that adds a little structure to the clay body, can get caught in the rib, and then it'll drag and make these scratch marks. So don't like that, but using the metal rib and then going over with your thumbs and finger works well. Also, if you want, you can use your sponge too, which I like to use for finishing touches. So kind of got that going. And I'm going to use this newspaper because it makes it easy for me to rotate on the table. If you have a banding wheel, which the studio does have a couple, this is my big one for home. It does speed things up. This is a really smooth one. The ones at the studio aren't this smooth, but it will help with the whole rotation. But just the newspaper on the table works fine. So again, I'm kind of working from the bottom, pulling the clay up and being conscious of the form. And you can tell it's almost like a salsa dish. Guacamole, maybe. It's good. It's on the thicker side. I'm going to thin it out more. I think dishes that are more for leaving on the table, where people like go into it, can be thicker, because then it has a nice weight to it. So like when you're dipping things into it, the pot's not so light that it tips over or moves around. But when it's something like a yogurt dish or a little ice cream dish that maybe you might want to hold in your hand, then a lighter feeling pot is nice, and kind of balances the food. This is looking pretty good. And so you can kind of see that the edges, all this is not perfectly straight. and even, and I like that touch that the pinch pot gives. So if you like it, you can kind of continue working with it. But if you want to make it straight, of course, you can take your paring knife, or your clay knife, and kind of slice it off and even it out. It's fine. Or like even with a needle tool, you can kind of slice. Or you can take your trimming tool and kind of scrape, or do the same thing with the metal rib, and you can kind of scrape off some of the clay where you think it's a little high compared to some, but this isn't too bad. This part's a little higher, but I don't mind it. So I'm going to continue from the bottom of the pot, stretching it up, and now I'm kind of using my hands, going up and pushing at an angle. So I'm going like this. If you can see, I've got some sun in my studio. Kind of up like this, and then rotate, 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 and then maybe do a little side to side when it comes closer to the rim, because I want to widen it to kind of thin it. Okay. Yeah, when it comes to the finishing part of this, I like to set the pot down so that I don't warp it so much, because and then the inside form is getting nice, and then you always want to look at the outside, see if it's evenly kind of following the contours of the inside of the form, and then check again. Like every time you stretch the clay, you're gonna get some wrinkles, so kind of smooth those back out again, and then you can kind of, because I'm using my fingers vertically on the outside of the pot, I can see that's how the fingerprints are. So if you don't like that, then you can also kind of work your thumb on the outside and get a form going. But you can have little crinkles, that's fine. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth like a china clay pot tea kettle, which they actually take stones and rub the clay when it's in its leather hard stage so that it gets that shine. I mean, you guys can do that too if you want. But, okay, starting to look good. What you think? Not bad, huh? It's pretty cute. Some thinking. Okay. It's not bad. It's a little thicker. I could do teeny bit thinner for my likes, but I think for you guys this is a nice thickness to work with, because when you go thinner it makes it harder to maintain the shape. But if you think your clay is still a little too soft, then you can, work on this in stages, so you can get it to this point, and then I want you guys to use both half of these, so make another one. Okay, so you're gonna get a lot of good pinching practice, and then so you can let this sit for a bit and then work on your next one. Remember, start from the cleaning the sharp edges, rounding it out, and I like to kind of tuck it inside. Okay. Alright, and then go in for the thumb. Slowly going deeper, deeper, and a little wider. Checking the bottom, feeling it, and then setting it down if you need to, rotating it. You can use your left hand, your right hand. You can also, in the beginning, you could use your index finger like this, but the thumb really works well. You just have a little more muscle in there and have a nice grab where you can actually pinch. So working like that. Remember to set up your bottom first, and then kind of see what you got going on there in the how wide your bottom is. So kind of use that as a gauge. And then remember, you don't have to start out completely wide in the beginning. It's a slow progress. You want to at least have the first bottom part to the right thickness, and then from there you can kind of work your way to the sides. So yeah, you can work on your second one and then come back to your first one. And for these, if you want, you can decorate. You can carve on the outside of the pot if you want. It's definitely up to you. If you want to draw with your sgraffito, with your needle tool, then that's good too. We do have white slip at the studio for common use that you could apply to this and then scratch into it, so then you get a nice contrast of the clay body and the white slip. But we will get into that in more detail later on. But let's see. The slip is also a nice way to clean up all the little wrinkles in the clay too. But I like to, let's see, let this kind of sit. When your rims are all different sizes, it's nice to actually have like a piece of foam or sponge, or even nicely folded up, kind of give it a little cushion so that it's not putting too much pressure. But also remember, the clay will pick up the texture of any fabric that you press it on. But let me just get to that. And so basically at this point you can put your stamp mark on here, on the side, on the bottom, wherever. Oh, and a good tip is sometimes I like to put a little divot in the very center of the pot, and it kind of helps for the pot to sit flat on the table. So just like give it a light, you can tap it a little bit, press it a little bit so it's a little, just a little raised on the inside, and then it gives it a little divot right here. But it gives kind of a footing for the pot to sit on the table, so there's less chances of the pot kind of rocking if it's not completely flat. Okay. So, sorry, hopefully that was in the camera view. But there's that. But let me get the slip so that if you guys want to use a slip, you can. And you can do the sgraffito if you want. There's some nice things you can do with that, but the bucket of slip is located underneath the slab roller, which is in front of the chalkboard to the right. So that big table with like a turning wheel thing and then a couple canvases lying on top, underneath that there is slip. So it will be labeled, but I'll have to label the bucket so you guys know how to get to it. But let's at least for now, this is basically what you want. Okay, so I'll add another video where I'm gonna put slip on this and then kind of decorate it to show you how sgraffito can work with you in the greenware stage decoration, which when you know how to decorate in the greenware stage and know how to decorate in the glazing stage, it really widens that possibility of trying different patterns and layers of aesthetics out. So okay, hopefully that was clear enough demo for you. Okay, not bad. I think I'm gonna work on this even after the demo, smooth it out a little bit. But All right, so for your assignment, make 2 pinch pots.